Welcome to Season 2 of Making Pondo and Talking Pondo. Talking Pondo is a podcast where Cliff and Marty give each other a film to watch and talk about them in detail. Some episodes will include a special guest. Making Pondo is a podcast where Cliff and Marty talk to people they have worked with and discuss their experiences on set. All right, Marty, we're back.
Yeah, we are back. Season 2. Back at it again. Our first talking with me, Marty, and Cliff here.
Me, Cliff. Me, Cliff. You, Marty. Me, Cliff.
We're watching Tarzan.
We talk Pondo. We talk Pondo.
So, yeah, Season 2. Wow, it's crazy.
That's pretty nuts. Kids, if you haven't figured it out by now, you're going to get 36 episodes a season. That's what we're going to call it.
Yeah. Easy way to keep track for us. Yeah.
Yeah, we were television kids, and so we were used to 24 episodes a season. So we thought, you know what, we're going to do it better than television, and we're going to do 1.5 times as many episodes.
Yeah.
36. Yeah. Now, I guess if you look at it one way, you could say we did 24 episodes of talking, which is a full season, and then we just did a half a season of making.
Well, you get 27 talkings, and you get 9 makings a season. So
well, that's true. So we cheated a little bit, didn't we?
So, but it ends up being 54 movies we covered.
That was a lot of movies, man.
Short period of time, and to start things off, let's do a small recap of the season of just what stands out in different ways.
Mm-hmm. So I put everything into a spreadsheet, which was kind of interesting, and So the movie that you hated the most was episode 36's Zorro the Gay Blade. The listeners will know that one.
It's definitely the one I gave the lowest rating to of the half star. Yeah.
Yes, I should say that. The lowest rating, yes. Mine was Road Games, and I can unequivocally say that I hated that movie. I'll never watch that fucking movie again. Your favorite movie, or not your favorite, but your highest rated movie was Animal Crackers at 5 stars, which I gave 4.
Yeah.
And then my highest rated movie was I had 2: Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, and Master and Commander: The Far Side of the World. And you had 4 4.5 star movies, which was Repo Man, Almost Famous, Ed Wood, Mon Uncle.
Yeah, I still stand by that. Yeah.
I had a lot more 4 stars than you did. I had 1, 2, 3. I had like 10 or 12, and you had 4.
Ah.
And I had a lot more 3.5. Well, not a lot more. I had about 10 3.5 stars, and you had about 8.
It seems like overall you enjoyed the movies.
I think so. Yeah, our 3 stars were pretty close as far as the number that we had, 10 or 11. I had less middle of the road 2.5 stars, where you had twice as many, almost 3 times as many of those that I had. And then our 2 and our 1.5 star movies are really, really close. Really close. And in fact, there are a lot of them the same thing. We 2-star Catch and Release, 2-star Nate and Hayes, 2-star Once Bitten.
There was a lot more in common than I remembered.
Yeah, 1.5 star Dark Star, 1.5 star Maximum Overdrive, 1.5 star Amongst Friends, 2-star Judgment Night. So there's a lot of agreement there. Honestly, you and I tend to have not drastically different opinions on movies, but we tend to, like, what we lean into tends to vary. So I was surprised there was as much overlap as there was.
Right. As far as movies that surprised me, that I ended up liking them more than I thought I would, rewatching Jerry Maguire again, I gave that a 3.5, but I remember it was leaning towards a 4. Like, I still give Almost Famous 4.5, I see, but ask me which one I would want to watch right now, I might watch the Jerry Maguire again. Maybe it's because I haven't seen it as many times.
Right, yeah, sure.
But I like both of those a lot. Predestination was a fun surprise. I didn't know what to expect from that. Walked away with
pretty good
on that one.
I went 3 on that. That was pretty damn decent, I thought.
D&D was another surprise because they hadn't made a really good D&D movie and then
ever. Yeah, and that one was shockingly good. Yep.
You got anything like that kind of you went into it and came out of it going, "Whoa, better than I thought or remembered.
Sullivan's Travels
Well, that was
was
a blind one, wasn't it?
that was a blind pick, but it was such a pleasant surprise.
That was a very good one.
I mean, oh, Bowfinger.
Oh,
I
that's a good
I hadn't
example.
seen Bowfinger in a decade, and I remember liking it when it came out, but it also sort of faded. It dropped off my radar pretty quickly. I watched this last time and just it that was such a joyous picture about making movies and about finding your group and about keeping them together, and sometimes you have to lie to them to get the project made, and sometimes they know that you're lying and they don't care because they just want to get the project made, right? So I really enjoyed that one. I thought that one was spectacular.
As far as movies that you continuously thought about on and off since you've watched them for the pod, I have a few of those. In one of them's
I have a
Out of
couple.
Africa. That
Hmm.
one kind of sticks with me. I think about that from time to time.
What about it sticks with you?
Well, I don't know. It just had such a good story that I find myself remembering it.
The
Whereas some
storytelling.
movies you kind of forget
Hmm.
about it, and this like some
Hmm.
images come back, and it's like, oh yeah, because it was just. I
Yeah.
noticed this season what I really learned more than anything is the best movies are the ones that do things you haven't seen before, that really pushed it. And it's like, oh, they make their mark. Like what we'll be talking about with our films discussion later today. You just do one thing different and bam, sometimes that's enough to put you on the map. But
Hmm.
another one that is like that for me is The Holdovers.
Ah. Uh-huh.
Continuously think about that one from time to time, and I see at the time I give it 2.5, but I suspect that if I watch that one as the years go by, that one could creep up to maybe
It's a
even as
it's a
high as a 3.5.
Yeah,
It sticks
it's a
with you.
slow burner. It
Mhm.
stays with you. It definitely stays with you. I like that movie quite a bit.
Yeah.
I
Breaking
really
Away was like that too, where
yeah.
breaking away from time to time, it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm still thinking about that thing.
Yeah, Breaking Away, I mentioned this before the podcast, but I saw it when I was, on cable, 12, 13 years old, and I didn't understand it. I didn't get it. Because it wasn't it was about things that I was going to encounter 7 or 8 years down the road. You know what I mean? I couldn't really identify with the characters. And then I catch it later on in my teens, late teens, early 20s. I'm like, oh, okay, that movie's actually not terrible. Then I catch it in my 30s and it's starting to say something different. And I forgot about it again. And then I watched it a couple months ago and thought, Jesus, this is a fantastic fucking movie. I mean, this is a really good movie. I
Yeah,
probably should have given it more than 3 stars. I probably should have given it 3.5 or 4, to be honest with you.
right. But
It stays with me. This idea of it's like a pre-entourage, right?
oh yeah, yeah.
Like a group of friends trying to all work at the same place, trying to stay in their high school cliques, and that's just not going to work. Life isn't going to let you do that,
Hmm.
along with all the weird, bicycling, college clashing, townies versus rich kids, and trying to figure out who you are. And I don't know, that's a
Hmm.
fantastic
And like I was mentioning before we hit record, looking back at these ratings, that's how I felt that week
movie.
after I just watched it. And sometimes you think about movies or they stick with you, and then you might watch it again and get a different vibe, or you might go, no, something got romanticized in my head, and this movie's still not very good. But I feel
Hmm.
like those are beyond that. I feel like there's something going on there.
Hmm.
Uh,
Monuncle kind of stayed with me too, but it stayed with me in both a good and a bad way.
I'm sorry you
Where I,
wore headphones on.
oh, yeah, that was a bad choice, but I get why it's influential. I get why people like it, but it just I keep thinking about it, going, God, if it had just been a little bit better here and there, I probably would have enjoyed it more. You know what I mean? Just these,
Hmm.
again, the bad sound, a few things like that, and but again, I understand why people like it. It's just
Hmm.
maybe on a second viewing or something, it might resonate a bit more with me. But that viewing, it just did not. And again, it's like Zorro the Gay Blade. It's just people arguing with each other and screaming at each other
Wish we had
constantly
those on the
throughout the
same
entire
week.
movie.
That would have been good. If
Oh,
that,
no shit, right? The screaming movies.
Mhm.
And yet, for some reason, I can tolerate Zorro the Gay Blade more than I can tolerate Mon Oncle.
Right? We got
Maybe
a
it's the
big
maybe it's the
dichotomy
French thing.
going
I don't
there.
know. Yeah,
Was there any other movie that you might rate higher as time goes on, you think?
I was looking through the list, and I think I was pretty fair with most of them. Um, my best fiend maybe, or the late game, I might have gone a half a star higher on.
Hmm.
Um, because I like the late game quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, but I gave it a 3 because I think part of the reason I like it is because for personal reasons, because I know it's a small indie film. I know he didn't have a lot of money to shoot it. I know what it takes to do that type of film and pull all those people together
Right.
and shoot that film, and he pulled it off. It looks great. It's a funny story, you know, um, and it does the unexpected. Like he puts this cute girl in the movie and does no romance. Thank you so much. She just
Mm-hmm.
rags on these dudes as they're playing hockey, and that's her whole thing. I'm the scorekeeper and I make fun of people. That's my job.
Mm-hmm.
No, don't bring your romance over here. He really avoided the normal stuff and just made a movie about a dude who's rediscovering his love for hockey.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, yeah, I would probably maybe bump that up a half a star. My Best Fiend, again, was great.
Yeah, that was good too.
And probably Breaking Away. If I probably should have given Breaking Away another half a star or a full star, 3.5 or 4, honestly.
And the movie that was the biggest surprise to me, or the I guess the pleasant surprise award goes to, I'd
Uh,
say, the Manhattan Project was
mm-hmm,
such a good, like, oh, look at this, you haven't seen this in a long time. And remember, I was like, I remember every frame of this movie.
mm-hmm,
He's throwing the frisbees down the hallways, and it's just, oh
yeah,
man, such a
yeah,
visceral time
yeah,
machine of a movie.
mm-hmm, yeah,
But yeah, that
and,
was the
and
nice
and well made
rediscovery.
too.
Yeah.
That's that early. In the '80s, you had those precocious people movies. The real geniuses of like, hey, I'm a smart guy and I'm trying to do something that's a little bit beyond you, but I'm also a good person. You know what I mean? You had these precocious characters, and that one, especially at that age, was really well done. And so many hints of Big Bang Theory
Oh yeah.
coming through in that film, where you're just like, oh, that's somebody saw this movie and
The
20 years
game
later
theory of the
wrote a
80s.
friggin' TV. Yeah, I wrote a TV show about it. But no, I think it's really good. It's one of those movies where it's like your friend that moved away in middle school that you remember, and you run into him 20 and you remember, like, for 20 years you're like, well, maybe he wasn't that great of a dude. Maybe I'm kind of romanticizing the whole friendship, and maybe I'm, and then you meet him again and you're like, no, that dude's fucking awesome. It's kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Did you have anything that was a pleasant surprise?
um Let me think. Oh, Ed Wood. I hadn't seen that in a while,
Oh,
in a very long time, and it was a pleasant surprise to go back to it and realize how good of a film it is. That's a really good
yeah.
movie. That's a really good movie. You can put that on and just sit down and watch it, and even if you don't know anything about Bella or Ed Wood, it's just, even if you don't know it's a true story, it's this crazy movie about this crazy filmmaker trying to get his movies made, and the links that he'll go to get it done, and
Mm-hmm.
it's really great. It's really
Yeah.
well made.
It's
You know,
much in the same way that we praise the late game because we know what it takes. This is a movie about showing what it takes in a
right?
hyper
Yes.
exaggerated fashion, but
Hmm.
it's so much of
Yeah.
it rings true. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and at that one point where she screams, "You're all a bunch of freaks and weirdos," and it's
Yeah.
just like, honey, have you not gotten it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's his group.
Yeah.
Now go write songs for Elvis and shut up.
And that's what a lot of these groups are. See, that's why I know Ed Wood's the better movie, but Night Riders gives me some of those same type of things in a way.
Yeah, I get. We've discussed that movie on and off of
Mhm.
microphone, and I don't get it with that one.
Well, it's a perfect
You know.
segue into the movies that kind of disappointed us the most, if I guess we could say. Now,
Yeah.
it's funny, early on we did Judgment Night, and I gave it a
Mm-hmm.
2. That was
Mm-hmm.
probably too nice early on. I'd probably give that more like a 1.
I was
Looking at
way
some
too
of
nice to Night
these.
Riders. I was way too nice to that movie because you're my friend and I know you love it. But that movie, that's a 1 star movie for me. I
A lot of critics say that too. Even with
you can
Ed Harris fucking hamming it up,
yeah, I
so
mean
flagellation alone.
even with the nudity in the beginning and it's just not doing it
I
for me.
get
And
it. Like,
mainly because it's too. Here's what I would say: I want to see the British version of that, which is like 20 minutes shorter.
oh, Excalibur.
There's like a hour 47-minute version of that that was released in the UK. I want to
Oh,
see
that's
that
right.
version.
The shortened
I want
version.
to see
I said it
that
should be
version.
all the Alan subplot cut out. I
Yeah, take all that crap out and just give me the and look, the side hacking is too long in that movie.
Side
It's
Hackers
way too
2.
long. It's way too long. But
Still,
anyway,
still hacking.
yeah, I'd have given that was still hacking, hacking and smacking, hacking, whacking and smacking.
I look at some of my lower ratings, and it's like clearly Dark Star is a worse film than A Boy and His Dog.
Mm-hmm.
That should be totally reversed. Boy and His Dog should have at least 1.5, if not 2. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going back and changing because these are
No,
just
I hear you.
what we did at the time, but realizing it's like, oh, I wouldn't want to sit through Dark Star again right now. I'll watch
No,
Boy and
I
His
wouldn't
Dog.
either.
At least it's a movie. No
Right.
offense, but how could John Carpenter be offended? Look what he did after it.
Right.
You got to
Right.
start
Exactly.
somewhere. I think the
Mm-hmm.
1.5 was for they got it done, they got it out, started a career,
Right.
for a college movie that they kept building on top of. Amongst Friends is probably still at the 1.5 for me.
I
Yeah,
can go one and a
or
half on that.
one.
That's not
Yeah.
something I'll ever really watch again. Class of 1984 is just a straight one for me. It's just such derivative trash. I just
Even though we have our teenage head song in the film, which is kind of
I hear
cool.
you. It's very nice, and I appreciate that for the movie,
That's
and
the whole
that's
reason
why.
we watched it. So,
Yeah, yeah. But oof.
and so then the movie that I gave a half star was the movie we reviewed on the last episode was Zorro the Gay Blade. And the only reason I really gave it the half star is because for a comedy, I need to laugh, and I just kind of sat there and didn't do anything. And so it's not like I have an extreme distaste or dislike or a love for it. It's just kind of, oh, and maybe
You
that's
didn't
the worst thing that a movie can do for somebody.
find the you didn't find the mute servant guy funny? I thought he was hilarious when he dresses up as a bear and he's like, "No, you're a dog," and
I
he gets
am
all upset. And,
I am fascinated by the genre of these movies that come after Blazing Saddles and Life of Brian, because you get things like Holy Moses with Dudley Moore. Remember that? And it's all
oh
these kind of
wow, yeah.
strange, and it falls into that. And maybe I'd like it more the more if I were to watch it again. Maybe I was in a weird mood that week, and just because I give it a 0.5 doesn't mean I'd rather watch A Boy and His Dog, Dark Star, Maximum Overdrive, Amongst Friends, or Judgment Night more than it. I'd probably rather watch Zorro than those.
I'd rather watch Zorro over most of those myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Your Sicario
It's more
review
based off of
and
other of those
score,
genre.
it for me looking at this list, your Sicario score is probably for me wanting along with Zorro, just because the score Zorro's. I didn't expect a high score Zorro score, but I didn't expect a point 0.5. I figured two and a half,
Mhm.
something like that. But your Sicario 2 is very surprising.
Yeah, it did too many things for me to where I was like, I'm like, no, just from
Hmm.
a technical perspective, I can understand how some people can really enjoy it, but I couldn't go higher than the two. But I still liked the movie. I especially liked the first hour of it. That was the most action packed. When they're going through the border and they're coming back across, that was the part I liked. Once she goes in the bank, kind of lost me a little bit. But I
Yeah.
do
So
want to
that
watch
was.
part two. I still want to watch the sequel, and I'd watch Sicario again. It was there's enough going on. Like I said earlier, if you do at least one thing, and that movie clearly does a bunch of things we haven't seen before, especially in that first hour. That warrant Sicario is definitely worth watching and probably a classic of some sort. But then my own personal tastes come in, and I end up with a
Mhm.
two.
Yeah. Well, and I'm not questioning again. I'm not questioning your choice
No,
of
I
it. It's
figured
just
it'd be good to
it was a
recap
very
why I thought
surprising
that. Yeah.
score. Again, it's a that's I
It's
mean
my controversial
that's
hot
shot
take.
by one of the great cinematographers, directed by one of the great directors. It's got a great cast. it's got an awesome kind of No Country for Old feel, or for Old Man feel to it. So I just thought that you would enjoy it more than that, right? Like I thought you'd be like, oh yeah, three, something like that, three and a half. But no, it was just didn't
Uh,
resonate with you.
didn't really land too much
Yeah,
there.
guess not.
And let me see, as far as things that you wrote as being low scores that I was surprised with. Let's see, is there anything that really surprised me that you said you didn't like? Uh, well, Road Games was kind of a surprise because I just didn't know. I thought maybe you had seen that movie back in
No,
the 80s, and I can
no.
understand if you've never seen it before. This is not the year to finally sit down and watch it. Day is probably past, but if you saw it back when, nostalgia's a hell of a drug, you know.
It is
Uh,
indeed.
and most of these other things, you were pretty much like, yeah. I was like, he's either gonna like this or he's not. You didn't really too much with them. You had your different degrees of it, but I'd say that one was probably the one where I went, oh shit, I didn't mean to give you a movie you didn't like, but
Mon Uncle, I think, was the one I remember you being most surprised about the
it was
score.
a surprise. But yeah, I
Yeah, I
kind
think
of
you
had a
expected it
feeling
to
it
be a little bit
could go
higher.
either way. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. The one movie that I gave us both that I thought was going to be a better review from both of us was Once Bitten. I
Oh,
I really thought that that was going to do better, and then I watched it and was like, oh my god, this is terrible.
mm-hmm.
It's so bad, and I'm not even sure it deserves a two, to be completely honest with you.
Yeah. Mine for that was Dark Star. I thought there was going to be a little more to it. My memory, and it was like, oh no, it's just
Mm-hmm.
a 50-some-year-old student film.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
it's
yeah.
funny. Some of our least favorite was Emilio, and then one of my favorite was Emilio. So
Fucking Emilio.
because I still like the Repo Man a lot, I gave it 4.5.
Yeah, I think I
It's
gave it a
probably
lower
more of a
score.
four, but man, I just
Yeah,
like it more. The more I watch it, the more I come away enjoying stuff from it.
yeah, I gave it a four. Yeah,
Well, that's pretty good recap there
yeah,
overall.
yeah.
Still don't
That was
think
a
there was
fun season.
anything out to watch. Yeah, I'd say watch all
Hmm.
54 movies and get back to us.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing on there that I would say is it's so heinous that you probably shouldn't watch it. Some of them you may struggle through, depending on your personal aesthetics, but I feel like they're all worth kind of just a gander, just to go, yeah, I've seen that, and holy crap,
Right.
good or bad.
Yeah.
Like you're gonna watch Out of Africa and be like, holy crap, dude, that was the
Yeah.
scenery's amazing,
Yeah.
gorgeous. They really pulled some stuff off there. Then you're gonna watch Road Games and go, holy crap, it's just Stacy Keach's cocaine nostril for 25 minutes straight.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Yeah. If you
If that's what you're into, right? Or
amazing meaning two different things.
yeah, exactly, amazingly terrible or amazingly wonderful. And I can't.
Yeah.
I wish they would have given the whole movie to him just in the cab with the dog the whole
Well, they almost did. Yeah.
time.
So here we are, and
So here we are at the first episode of season two.
we decided for a little theme for this
Second.
batch of three. We got horror movies coming for you because it's
That's right.
October when these originally released, and when you're listening to it in the future, it's not Halloween, but still, it's a good way for us to mix it up a little bit around here.
Yeah.
And this week, we feature two movies that have characters named Sid. Get Out, the dog
Oh,
is
that's
named
true.
Sid. Yeah,
That's
and
true. Yes.
Scream, Sid is our lead
Yeah.
character. So we watched Scream from 1996. We have to identify that now because Scream 5 in 2022 is also called Scream.
That's ridiculous.
So yeah,
That's ridiculous. I hate
I
that. I
know
hate
they
that
don't
so
want people
much.
to know how many sequels there are, but we're not reviewing part 5 today. We might talk about it briefly, but and then we also watched from 2017 Get Out.
Hmm.
And so it's very interesting pairing, and it's going to make for a good discussion because first of all, before we talk about what these movies are about, I want to mention that these are movies that help propel the genre forward.
Very
They
much
were
so.
things that kind of broke through and mixed things up a little bit by
Very much so.
doing your normal kind of tropes, but then mixing things up
Really mixing
just
it up.
enough, changing things to
Yep.
where the next thing you know, they're gigantic grossers.
Yep.
And because when a genre movie like this or any movie makes a shit ton of money, that money trickles down, some of it, to make more of the same type of genre, which is
Yep.
interesting that, you look at Get Out, uh, to jump ahead just a little bit, that's a Blumhouse film, right? And so
Early
that
Bluehouse.
one
Yeah.
did
No
very
kidding.
well, and that leads to some things like Halloween 2018 happening, which becomes one of the biggest grossers for a film like that ever. And then that allows the horror industry to thrive again, regardless of what you think of the quality of Halloween 2018. I
Hmm.
don't like it, but I do understand the movie itself revitalizes because it brought in so much money because that
Right.
trickles down.
Well,
So we need things like that to happen.
it pulls the spotlight back onto the industry and generates and allow because I was like, hey, that's hot right now. Let's generate some more stuff, and it's got to be in that vein
Yeah,
because that's what people are trying to look for right now.
yeah. So
Um,
let's go back
I
in time to. Well, go ahead, say
real
your
quickly,
piece. Yeah.
yeah, real quickly, I found both of these movies. You talk about similarities. I found both of these movies to also be horror films that were turning a lens upon the current
Mm-hmm.
state of society and upon it was they're both kind of meta films in a way
Oh, very much
where
so.
they're commenting on
Scream being
society and
another
commenting on the current
granddaddy of
state
those.
of tropes of American society and so on. And I watching them both, I was like, is this is kind of these movies are both kind of doing the same. They're doing them in a different way and over different subject matter, but they're doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, things like it's interesting to go backwards a little bit at a time here to the success of 1999's Blair Witch Project helps revitalize horror enough to go through the aughts, which leads us out to things like Get Out. I'm sure there's another vital movie in there.
Paranormal Activity would
Paranormal
probably,
Activity, that's the one because that's Blumhouse also in the
yeah,
Saw
that's
series.
2007 or 8 or something
Yeah,
like that,
they
right?
made so many Saw, but these big ones allow
Saw
these
is another
others
one carried through,
to
yeah.
eventually hit
Well, and
the
Hostel
bridge line.
opens up the door for Saw, right?
That's true too. Yeah. And also, I think Scream, in a way, kind of opens the door for Saw because in the original Scream, it's more about we're playing a game and you have to guess what
Mm,
door I'm at.
hmm.
And they kind of
That's a
lose
good
that
call.
as they go. And then Saw is all about playing demented games. But
Yeah.
then we go back even further to Scream in 1996. Now, you can say what you will about Wes Craven's filmography. Obviously, not every movie he made was very good. Some of his movies are awesome. Some of his movies are kind of, they're not, he doesn't have the greatest track record in the world. Some people aren't out there going, Shocker is a 5-star film, for example. People Under the
Sure.
Stairs has its fans, but, every now and then he'd make something like My Soul to Take or Cursed or things that just didn't hit. I mean, I like Red Eye, but some people don't care for it. But anyways,
I mean, we're talking about the guy who wrote The Last House on the Left.
well,
He wrote The Hills Have Eyes.
yes.
He wrote the '82 Swamp Thing. He wrote Hills Has Eyes too. He wrote Nightmare on Elm Street.
Well, that's what I'm getting to.
What the fuck are? Okay, sorry. I was just like,
You can say what you want about his overall filmography because it's not like a John Carpenter where it's like all these like ooh,
everything.
one
Yeah,
after the
sure,
other or is hitting it or
sure.
like
Okay,
a John
okay.
Hughes. He has like an every other kind of
Hmm.
classic record. But what he
Hmm.
did different, and you can't deny, he revitalized the genre not once but twice. The slasher was almost all but dead, and here comes Nightmare on Elm Street, which completely changed the fucking game. Now we got the supernatural slasher thing going, and that went all the way. They rode that gravy train right to the beginning of the '90s, right? And then
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
kind of petered out, and we all kind of what's the saying? You put the childish things away or the things of your youth, and you kind of forget about it for a few years. And they are still making horror movies, but from around 90 to 95, it wasn't the heyday of the 80s, right? It wasn't these classic things coming out. People can argue. I'm sure we'll get hit up in the notes, but I'm saying overall. And then out of the blue in 1996, here comes Kevin Williamson's script, another one of those mumblecore people we like to talk around here who fits right in that swingers timeline with your Kevin Smith and your John Favreau's and whatnot. And then Wes Craven changes the game again with Scream. So I remember going to see that movie, not really knowing what it was, hearing it was good, and then realizing the characters in the movie know the movies that we all knew. And where it's like, remember that shit? You all haven't thought about it in 6 or 7 years, but we didn't fucking forget. And so you got to be like, oh shit, I got to be the one who remembers all that shit too, because if I don't know what happens in prom night, how am I going to live through this movie? And so as an
So
audience
it did
member, I was
force
like,
you.
this is fucking cool. It's pulling me
Yeah, because
into the
it
thing.
forces new horror fans to go back also and go, well, fuck, they're talking about prom. I got to go watch prom night now.
Yeah.
Now I got to go watch Halloween. Now I got to go watch, Jamie. Now I got to go watch all the Jamie Lee Curtis horror movies because that's
Yeah.
brought up over and over again.
And so
Um,
it's like, wow, he does it twice in his career. And it's like, that's pretty good. That's pretty
yeah,
fucking good.
I
But
mean
anyway,
West
yeah.
West for me is always going to be one of my favorite directors because
Oh,
he
me
made
too.
Deadly Friend,
that's,
which
that's one of his goofy ones.
it is, but
It's
I
fun though.
love that movie because it's so fucking weird.
Yeah.
It's such and look, it's
He
if we
always
pull it onto this show,
misses. Yeah.
if we pull it onto this show, nostalgia wise, I'll give it a 4.
Right.
Film wise, I'll give it a 2.5.
Yeah.
It's not something that I understand. If I tell you to watch this movie, you're going to go, dude, what the fuck? After you watch it, and I'm going to go, I know,
I
but
have an
still, it's a
affection for
fun
that
ass
show.
movie.
Yeah.
It's a fun kind of weird little '80s movie. Plus, Serpent in the Rainbow also for
Oh,
me,
see when he hits, he hits, right?
dude, that shit where they're burying him, that had one of the scariest fucking trailers when I was a kid. I remember watching movies in the theaters while that trailer was being run during, and this is back, by the way, when they would run a horror movie trailer during a PG movie, so the 12-year-old kids would see it. And I remember there's that scene where he's screaming, "Don't bury me, I'm not dead yet."
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, I just had nightmares for months about that stuff. Then I watched the movie and I had even worse nightmares. It's a
Mhm.
wildly weird movie. It's all over the place, but it's really scary. We're
Yeah.
not even talking about the movies we came to review,
Well,
but
it
we
all
are
is
talking about
part of it
Wes, and
though.
he
This
deserves.
one's a bigger
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah, it is. This is this is a master horror movie made by a master horror movie maker.
Yeah, at just the
It's
right
it's
time
just
too,
yeah,
because
it's a brilliant fucking script. It's directed so fucking well.
this lit everything up to where horror was not mainstream. They weren't doing anything, and then boom!
Well,
I know what you did last summer, etc. Urban Legend to getting to Blair Witch, all the way up to the modern day with the Halloween 2018.
this also introduced the cool teen kid in the horror movie,
Right.
right? Like April Fool's Day kind of did it,
Mm.
where it was a bunch of cool kids, it's from the school all hanging out together and there, murders happening. But Scream was really, like the hot girls, the cool guys, and all this kind of thing. And that went into, like you said, I Know What You Did Last Summer, Cruel Intentions,
Oh yeah, not
friggin'
even horror
Teaching Mrs.
films.
Tingle, The
It
Faculty.
oh, you're right. It lit more of a you can trace WBCW
Mm-hmm.
back to
Mm-hmm.
this stuff.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. It lit up this like teen horror type of thing that really took off for quite a while. And Jesus, how many did I Know What You Did Last Summer do? Two, three,
Oh,
four sequels, something like
there's
that?
at least three of them. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and then you get the what's the one with the where the kids can see their deaths coming and they're trying to avoid them?
Final Destination.
Final Destination. Again,
These
teenage
things
kids in a horror
they
movie type
all
of
get
thing.
greenlit because of the success of
I
this
think so.
particular screen.
I think so. And not to say that teens weren't in movies previous, but like if you look back to like Friday the 13th or part 2, they're not really, they're a different kind of teenager.
Mhm.
These are teenagers that are, I don't know. Um
They're more of the caricatures, almost 70s characters in that one.
I think that the
They're the tropes,
teenagers
but they don't know it yet.
yeah, I think the teenagers in Scream feel like more like people who you'd actually meet on the street or that you would
Right, because
know.
now
They're
the audience
archetypes of
is in the movie.
yeah, they're archetypes of people that you went to high school with. And in the 80s, it's just like, oh, that's the jock guy, that's the nerd dude, oh, that's the guy in the wheelchair,
Now it's we
that
saw
type of
that
thing.
movie too.
Yeah.
Hmm. That meta thing starts kicking in. We hadn't had that before. There was enough
Hmm.
of a history of those slasher movies that had come and gone that now a trope lore could be, and they were the ones who just fucking hit it right there. And it also does go hand in hand with Kevin Smith in that way where not only do you see Clerks in the background over and over
Yeah.
again in this
No
movie,
shit.
it's
Yeah.
the things that contribute to that, WB, CW, Cruel Intentions, etc. type of
It's it's got a very
Yeah.
Kevin Smith feel of like the characters are self-aware. Like there's almost a feeling like one of these characters in the Scream is going to look at the camera and go, "Isn't this scary?"
Yeah.
and run off.
Like
Like
Kevin Williamson
it's
writing.
it's so fucking meta to a certain extent that like it's I kind of love that. Like
Hmm.
I think it needs that. Otherwise, if you played this straight like a Halloween slasher type movie, it wouldn't work the same
Even
way.
though it follows Halloween probably closer than
It
any
does.
other story of a
Agreed.
slasher movie. Yeah.
Yep. So
Um,
I guess we're starting with Scream.
yeah. I had something else I was going to say. I'm sure I'll come back to
I'm
it.
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. While you're thinking, the first scene in this movie is a really good one. It's iconic. It sets up the entire movie. It sets up the entire franchise.
And it's
It,
also very interesting as far as slasher movies go. They usually have a single kill in the beginning that lasts 10 or 15 minutes to set the movie up, and then your body of the movie is like an hour long. This
right?
one, the body of the movie is like 95 minutes still. It's like you got this whole other story after the Casey opening with
Yeah.
Drew
This is
Barrymore.
just they use it as the perfect setup for everything that's going to happen. Um, but the guessing game, the meta quality of, do you like scary movies? And yeah, I like scary movies. And it was Jason, motherfucker. I saw that movie 100 times.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I said, it seems very self-aware, but it also, I mean, that's a very tension-building scene. Like even when she does the thing that she's like, because I think at one point she, maybe it's Sydney later on, but they're like, why does she stay in the house? Why doesn't she just do the smart thing and run out the door? And she does run out the door. Like uh, Drew Barrymore's character
Oh, yeah.
confronts this guy at every turn, daring him,
Mm-hmm.
and then the dude turns it on her
Yeah.
by killing the boyfriend, and then she's a sudden mess, and it's just fantastic. It's so good.
Yeah, this is where most of the edits in the movie happen to make it an R, is in this beginning. There's more gore with the boyfriend and the unrated, and then when she's
Ah,
hanging from the tree and it
uh-huh,
does that weird strobe effect as it's going, that
uh-huh.
was not a strobe effect. It went in like real time, and I guess that was considered too gory back then. Nowadays,
Interesting.
be
Yeah,
preferably
no, no, it is. Yeah.
PG-13. And then I think later on, I'm not positive of this, but it seemed pretty clear when Billy is stabbing Stu to make it look like, they were
Right.
attacked. They hold on Nev Campbell reaction shots so long that it feels like they didn't want to show us the stabbing into Stu's shoulder because you'll hear the sound effects of it. And I'm
Hmm.
thinking that might have been another trim where,
I mean, it's pretty rough to watch those two dudes stab each other like that. It's
yeah,
it's
they
pretty.
really sell it.
That's really graphic, and yeah, they do sell it. But yeah, that first kill is iconic.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and it's so funny that it's a smart move by Drew Barrymore to take that part, because she's like, well, I'm not a scream queen. I'm in the movie for a minute, but now I'm in this
Yeah.
franchise
And it's a
forever.
real bait and switch because you think
Yep.
normally somebody in the beginning is going to be the person of the whole
The
movie,
the
but
heroine.
oh, you
Yep.
forgot. This is a slasher movie. We haven't seen these in like 12 years or so.
That's right.
He's only in the movie in the beginning, and
Dead.
it's Sid's story. So, what is Scream 1996 about?
Oh well, you know what? Let's go over that real quick. So, a year after the murder of her mother, a teenage girl is terrorized by a mass killer who targets her and her friends by using scary movies as part of a deadly game. Um, the storyline is, a year after her mother's death, Sydney Prescott, played by Nev Campbell, and her friends start experiencing some strange phone calls. They later learn the phone calls were coming from a crazed serial killer in a white face mask and a large black robe looking for revenge. They call him Ghostface.
Great
His
use of
phone calls,
technology. Yeah.
yeah, his phone calls usually consist of many questions, the main one being, "What's your favorite scary movie?" along with much scary movie trivia, ending with bloody pieces of innocent lives scattered around the small town of Woodsboro.
Yeah. For a movie from almost 30 years ago to have, that's why the sequels still work in some respect with the modern day phone, because they find a way to take that and make it work now, because that was kind of ahead of itself using
The mobile phone,
wireless telephone as
yeah,
a
cloning the phone and all that
terrorizing
stuff.
device.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, One of the things I noticed is that right after the murder, the first murder, Drew Barrymore dies.
Hmm.
The next shot, the next two faces that we see are the heroine and the killer, one of the killers,
Yeah.
Sid and Billy.
And
And
the movie totally tells you, but then it
it
keeps
does,
doing
but
it.
you
It
don't. But
redirects
but
you.
it
Yeah.
it keeps misdirecting you. The red herrings in this movie are
Yeah.
fantastic, dude. You don't know. You're not sure who really. You have tons of suspicions, and for a long time you're like, well, the dad, he didn't check into the thing. It must be the dad. You
Everybody's
know,
a suspect.
not everybody, but enough of
Well,
there are enough red herrings running around that you're like,
I think that's a
it
long
could be
part
this guy,
to it.
it could be that guy. I'm not sure.
You know, having just watched North by Northwest again about a week or so ago,
Oh, really? Okay.
and then watching this, it's like, oh yeah, and that's the movie he made right before Psycho, where Hitchcock basically invents those slasher tropes. It's like, oh yeah, all roads lead back to Hitchcock again, because this one does have a lot of that feel of who's doing what and who's lying to who, and
Hmm.
it's that classic murder mystery setup more than anything.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Um, One of my comments was bunch of rich kids killing each other off. I don't see the problem. Which is, that's just me being a cynic. Um, I noticed that Sid has an Indigo Girls poster in her
Yeah,
bedroom,
yeah, very prominent.
uh, which is like, okay, everyone in this movie is so fucking young, Marty.
Oh
And
yeah,
I sound so old saying that, but
yeah.
like
It's weird when you look back now, and it's like now
Nev
that
and Rose are so
young,
young and gorgeous, and the
everybody's so
guys are
young.
all good, just
I mean, David
fresh,
Arquette really
young
does
looking,
look
and
like he's 12.
he does, he does. Skeet's got that face that put him on a bunch of magazines and posters, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just insane. Matthew Lillard, Jesus Christ, he looks even younger than he did in SLC Punk.
Yeah, just tearing up the scenery in this one. So many iconic lines, especially towards the end, with everything from "I'm getting woozy here" to my parents are gonna be so mad at
My
me.
parents are gonna be so mad at me. You call the cops. My mom and dad are gonna be so
Mhm.
mad at me.
He just goes
Um,
all in. Yeah.
yeah, he dug into those lines. One of my other notes was, so these two guys rape and kill Sydney's mom, and then they go after her, and it's like that is some fucked up shit. Like you gotta be really messed up.
Oh, this is super dark. You
I
know,
mean, it's super dark once you
weird
dig into
because
the
it's a
motives.
historical movie, but it's very
Yeah,
dark. Yeah.
it's a surface movie in respects to, like, you're just kind of watching this pop culture slasher movie, and then when you start to kind of look at it and dig into the motives in the background, you're like, oh, this is kind of messed up.
Mm-hmm. Especially by the time you get to part three, and it's like, what? There was somebody
Hmm.
else in the blah blah blah. Well, I'm not going to spoil part three for you today, but that's when you start to get into retcon territory. So it was K and B effects. So it was
Okay.
Bob Kurtzman and
Who are
Nicotero
we?
and Harry Berger, and it was a team that worked on it, and so that's pretty cool.
We love us some Bob Kurtzman. He's our guy.
Also, this is a
Bob, if you're listening, hi Bob.
also this is a
Hi Marcy.
party animal connection movie. Uh, Probably one of the more
Really?
important ones is because this is and it's funny because the credits say additional director of photography, Peter Deming. Peter Deming
Really?
was one of the second unit directors on the Party Animal,
Party
right? That
animal.
was one of his
Yeah,
very first ones. We always like to pick out anybody who worked on the movie where Pondo comes from. If they're
that's right.
involved in a movie, even if they'd probably rather forget that film, it is interesting that
Too bad.
several of my favorite films by the same director of photography. When I discovered
Hmm.
that later, it was like, it kind of makes sense to me. I think what I had to say was something about Kevin Smith or Clerks being everywhere, but it's very possible that we might have made all the points about that. Probably something I'll remember after we stop recording.
Um, so somebody on a review called this the best teenage horror slasher film, and I was like, there it is. Like that's the
Yeah,
genre that he kind of launched with this. And again, there were teenagers in other slasher films, but the way that they did this, where it was centered around teenagers going to school and their daily lives and being killed, was completely different than just teenagers on
yeah.
Halloween or
This is the
teenagers at
first
a
time
lake.
first time they made them real characters.
Right.
But see, it's
Exactly.
also first time since things like the first Halloween, which is why that one's effective more than some of the
Hmm.
others, because nobody dies for like an hour into the movie from that main cast that we know.
Right.
And during that time, what happens? We get to know them, we get to
Right.
care about the characters.
Very true.
And when people start getting offed, you start fucking caring. And like in
Yeah.
Scream, it's more of like an excitement, like, oh shit, what's going to happen? Are they going to get away? Are they going to get them? Who is this? Which one's hiding here? And you find out there's more than one killer, which is usually what they like to do in these Scream movies. And that's a
Yeah.
game
Yep.
changer as well. You know, the
Yeah.
voice changer.
Once you know it's two killers, um, it's kind of like the Sixth Sense in that way. Like once you know it's two killers, the scariness of how the killer is everywhere is sort of ruined,
Yeah.
right? But I mean, and
And the
having
retcon of
two
the sequels, there might be more than two killers. Who knows?
yeah, and having two killers is kind of a new idea. It's
Yeah,
kind of a
you don't
it's a
see that
brilliant.
in those others.
Nope,
Huh.
you don't. Before this, you don't see that. Um, but it does make the movie. I mean, you could rewatch it, but the thrill of the scariness of the rewatch is kind of diminished because you already know, much like the Sixth Sense,
Yeah.
you already know where the ghosts are coming from. You already know Bruce Willis is dead, right? And sometimes that's a great thing where you go back and watch a movie, you're like, oh shit, everything changed because I found that out, and you know. But
Mhm.
in this one, it's still a great horror movie. It's still iconic as hell, but it does diminish a bit because you know the secret.
Yeah.
You know what I
And
mean?
then you can look for things that you
But then
wouldn't
you,
be
you
looking
begin to
for.
look for things, right?
Oh,
But
that
then
was
after
silly.
that
That was
viewing,
too. Yeah.
now you know the secrets. You've looked for the things, and now you're like,
Well, that's
okay,
why
just
you have to wait a long time for you
right,
forget all that, and then you
right,
watch it.
right.
Yeah, it is a little long. It's almost 2 hours,
I didn't have a problem with the length of it at
and,
all.
and for me, over repeated viewings throughout the years, that's where there's some parts where I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta get through this
Oh, okay,
little
okay.
semi awkward scene. But you know, the
Hmm.
one that makes me uh, laugh the most, and I think it's because of what they did in part two, is that scene in the hallway in the school where in part two it's Tori Spelling actually playing her in the movie of Stab. And so I see
Yeah,
the scene that's based off of, right? And I'm
yeah,
kind of like,
yeah.
it seems
Think
so
well,
corny
she
to me
even
because I'm
says it's probably
thinking of
Tori
the other.
Spelling in the
Yeah,
movie, right? Who
it's
does
just
be in a
more
TV movie.
example of the perfect meta
Hmm.
of the whole thing. And yeah, the further on in the series you get, the more they try to change the backstory more and more and more. It gets
Yeah,
crazier and
just to
crazier.
fit
I
just
still
to fit
enjoy it,
whatever
but
new plot device they've come up with.
it
Yeah.
is kind of ridiculous in a way, but I still enjoy them. But I really do like this first one. Is there anything else about this one that we
Oh, dude, I have a page and a half of notes.
oh, okay, yeah.
These kids today is an actual line in this movie. Somebody actually says these kids today, and I was
Mm-hmm.
just like, oh my god. Um, Man, they treat Dewey like shit in this flick. Rose McGowan just berates this poor son of a
Don't
bitch.
call me that at work.
Like at his job, dude. Like at his job in front of his peers, she just basically emasculates him. Brutal. Um,
These are my superiors.
mom, mom said when we're at work, you have to treat me like you know. Oh my god. I feel like the cameraman for Courtney Cox should have been Danny McBride. I think that would have been
Oh yeah,
perfect.
the pre Danny McBride.
The
Danny
pre
McBride
Danny
goes on to make
McBride,
the Halloween movies. So
right? They do a great job of making the dad into a red herring.
oh,
Um, they really do. He really seems like he's, especially once he leaves. I'll be at this hotel. Well, he never checked in. There's no reservation. Now you're starting to go, oh, okay. And then there's that point where they find his car tucked off in the woods, and you're like, he's the killer.
yeah.
It's obviously him. The principal misdirect is also well done.
Mm-hmm.
When the fuck is he going to go on a con circuit? Like I'm ready to get a picture with Fonzie. Let's
Oh, he
do it.
does sometimes. Yeah, he needs to get
Let's
back out.
go. Um, it's nice to see Courtney. Not to be rude, but it's nice to see Courtney before she had all the surgeries. That's very pretty girl from Friends, man. And she just doesn't look the same, you know. And in general, I wish women would stop doing that and just let Hollywood eat it. You know, Hollywood will still hire you if none of you do that because they won't have a freaking choice, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But that's just me. Um,
No,
this is a
I'm also in favor of people not chopping their faces off.
Yeah, don't do that to yourself. Don't do that. Somebody will hire you anyways. You you got to where you are because you have talent,
Mm-hmm.
not because you look young.
Yeah.
And I get it. There's a lot of talk about women over 40 in Hollywood and their careers just dying, which means that you and I, as writers and filmmakers, need to make more room for women over their 40s in Hollywood, in my opinion,
Mhm.
right? Like, let's write some roles for these ladies because I just don't want to, like, no, don't do that to yourself, and don't listen to the pressure of Hollywood telling that you have to look that way.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, maybe that's just me. And who
No,
knows?
you make
I
a
may delete. I may even delete it out of this podcast, man, because maybe it's just me and my personal opinions. But I don't know. I just don't think it's needed. But anyway, um, the principal misdirect is we're real is real well done. It's a masterclass in turning expectations on their head,
yeah.
misdirecting the audience constantly while giving them all the clues that they need. If you watch this movie 3 or 4 times, you can see the clues laid out in front
Oh
of you.
yeah,
Like,
it's all there.
there he is. They're telling you the killer. That's the killer. That's the killer.
And I know
They're
some people have some issues with things that they think don't make a whole lot of sense, but you also can't pull at the thread too much.
no, it's a horror movie. I
It's a
mean,
horror movie and it's a satirical horror movie.
right,
If you're
right.
getting angry at it, just go, wait a minute. There's a joke going on here. I shouldn't be trying to logically follow this.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
Because otherwise, things like this is the part where the killer comes back for one last scare. That doesn't make any sense in real life, but of course it's going to happen. And because, as Billy says, we're all in a big movie.
Right,
This is just
right.
part one. So
Well, and
you can see the influence on Love Song of William H. Shaw,
sure.
the meta.
I can also. I love the fact that
Called Charm, Dick. Like
I
that
love that.
line. That's very influential on
That's true.
yeah,
That's something Matthew Lillard would say in Scream for sure. It's
yeah.
called Charm, Dick.
But isn't that what they tell him when he's all, didn't he put her liver in the mailbox? And then he says something like, it's called blank.
You're right. God, you're right.
That cadence always kind of
Cadence,
inspires
yes.
me
Yes,
with
that's
that line.
hilarious. I didn't even
Yeah.
put that together until just
Mhm.
now. School's Out
It's
is a
called
weird
tact.
soundtrack.
It's called
School,
tact.
yeah, Tact. There you go. School's Out is a weird choice soundtrack wise.
That was the one anomaly song in the soundtrack.
It's just like, huh?
Still far
Okay.
back in time that it's mostly just a rock based soundtrack. When we get into Scream 2 and up, they start mixing more hip hop vibes in. Starts getting a little more modern.
I mean, that song's from
Still kind of,
that song's from the mid '70s.
yeah,
That song's 20 years old.
that's the
It's supposed to be.
holdover, like Dazed and Confused type song. But it's weird because this is like a post grunge horror movie. You get people with flannels and and it's like, no, we're taking you back to the 80s. We're going back to Jason and Freddy shit. You guys have put all
In the
that away
90s
for
though.
years.
It's like, oh, you guys had pizza in the 80s, now have pizza in the 90s. It's different,
Yeah.
right? Here's some favorite quotes from the movie. The Richard Gere gerbil story. Wow.
You only hear that so many times before you start believing it.
That's right. A Wes Carpenter flick.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
I love it. Um,
I remember what I was going to say now.
is it Wes Craven or is it John Carpenter? Which one is it?
Hold on to your dialogue there for a second. I remember what I was going to say. This movie, out of all of Wes Craven's movies, feels the least like his overall directorial style. I think it's because the script is so strong that the things that Wes seems to do the most is the characters themselves and how they interplay with each other. But visually and stylistically, it doesn't necessarily match with Elm Street, although there are some tones there. That was the thing I was trying to remember. But anyways, more of your best lines from the...
Did he direct 3 Dream Warriors?
He had involvement. I think he co-wrote it and produced it, but he didn't really like the ending of the film.
Okay, gotcha. So Wes Carpenter flick. There's always some stupid bullshit reason to kill your girlfriend. It's a great fucking line. That scene where Jamie Kennedy is trapped between the two killers in the video store.
Mm-hmm.
That's the tell for the audience.
Yeah.
That's literally the writer and the director, like, put it right in front of them. Yeah, these two guys are the killers.
Mm-hmm.
Put it, because they're so sinister with their good friend right in between them. It's like there they are. But yeah, those are some of my favorite quotes from the movie. That like the plot of some scary movie is another great quote.
Ah, see, because that was the original title of the film.
Right. Well, it's also the movie, the parody that
Yeah,
came
ended
out
up
of it,
being
a
that.
scary movie. Yeah. Um, One of the things I noticed about this movie, why don't any of them scream?
Oh, really?
There's not a lot of
Not a
screaming.
lot of screaming.
In the end, at one point,
Well,
Nev comes
probably
out of the
because
house and
that
goes,
wasn't the title. Yeah.
but in the end, at one point, Nev comes out of the house and is like, help me, help, screaming for fucking help. And I don't mean screaming because you're scared. I mean screaming for help. Like, dude, if somebody's chasing me through a house, I'm not just screaming. I'm screaming for anybody to help me that can help me.
Maybe they were trying to break away from that trope.
That's interesting.
Because they're kind of more like movie.
Yeah.
They're real life, but they're still movie characters. They're just movie characters that know about real life, kind of.
The garage door death was probably the only hokey point of the movie for me. I just thought it was dumb. Like, first off, what girl's gonna crawl halfway through a doggy door? I mean, it
That is
just
a little weird, yeah.
seemed really silly. Um, I noticed that Sid seems to have there's a scene where Sid's talking to Skeet about her mom, right? And the fact that her mom,
Let's
well, my
face
mom,
it, Sid. Your mom was no Sharon Stone. One of the
right,
lines that
exactly.
I always remember for whatever reason.
But this is earlier where she's talking to him about her mom and the possibility that her mom probably wasn't the greatest person,
Mm-hmm.
and she's got like a Texas Midwest accent all of a sudden,
Oh, really?
where it's like, oh Jesus Christ, did you have to rush to the scene or something? Because there was this weird Texas Midwest accent that I just was like, where the fuck is that coming from? Because I haven't heard it the rest of the movie.
Whoops.
Whoopsie. Um, she's a fantastic actress. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
crapping on her at all by any means.
Hey, everybody does a really good job in this. Yeah.
Yeah, and considering she was born in Ontario, I mean, why would she have a Midwest accent? Maybe I don't know. Maybe it was an early choice or something.
Right.
Um,
One or something.
um, the I love the fact that Sydney breaks one of the horror rules. The only reason that Sydney lives through most of the movie, according to the movie, is that she doesn't break any of the horror rules, and then she has sex with her boyfriend. And like right after that, her friggin' life is forfeit. Like, I mean, she's running for her life 10 minutes after having sex with this dude. And I like that. I like that they lay out the rules and she just breaks them.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that's what ends up kind of putting her in that situation.
You don't know the rules.
Uh, Death by TV is fantastic. I
Yeah,
love
see,
that.
people say Stu could still be alive after that TV, but
No,
remember, you went pretty deep. He was
you were
already
pretty deep.
he's
Yeah.
already bleeding out. But see, the original script of Scream 3 was to be Stu in charge of whoever was going, and it was going to be another high school one. But Columbine happened, and they said no, we're not doing that story, and so we end up with the weird on the movie set one instead. So that was a plan
Or
B. That's
bringing
why
Jay
that
and
one's a
Silent
little
Bob and all
weird.
that shit.
Yeah. And then Jay and Silent Bob are actually in the movie, not just in a poster.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's because it's Miramax. But also, in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, they're walking into the set of a Scream film, right?
Well, it's what we call synergy, Marty.
Mm-hmm.
When we synergize products to leverage in the corporate world, we synergize products to leverage marketing so that we tie them together, so that we synergize their marketing potential and their effectiveness upon the poor, unsuspecting fucking consumer.
Wes, a monkey? It's like you guys aren't even trying anymore.
Trying to count my money.
Oh yeah,
Okay?
that's
Leave me
the
alone.
official hunting.
Yeah, I know it's horrible still. My final note is I have very few notes about this movie. It's my kind of horror. It's the
Mhm.
right level of scare, the right level of jump scare, the right level of blood, the right level of gore. It's the kind of horror movie that I want to watch.
Yeah, yeah,
It's top tier fucking horror.
holds up. Changes
It not
the
just
game.
holds up. It's just so fucking well made. It's
Well,
scary.
that's why it holds up because it's a good
It's
movie overall. Yeah.
yeah.
The
I
the
forgot
script is
parts.
tight. Yeah.
The jump scares. I kept waiting for the part where it's like, oh, the video delay. Oh, the video delay.
Oh
Cool,
yeah,
cool, cool. I kept waiting for that.
that was fun.
Um, It was great. Yeah.
Like how they use Halloween in the background. Like Dewey comes in the house and the movie and he doesn't know if it's the
Yes.
movie or if it's sound.
So good.
He has one of
So
my
good.
favorite parts in the movie where after the ghost face calls Sid after the bam, bitch went down, bam, Sid, super
Mm-hmm.
bitch part. Another one of
Right.
my favorite
Right. Right.
pieces
Right.
of
Yep.
dialogue is she gets that phone call and she leaves the
Mm-hmm.
phone and Dewey picks it up and he's like, hello. And then the Red Right Hand song kicks in. And it's just such this weird, goofy
Mm-hmm.
part that I like that part.
It does do. That's part of what it smartly does. Also, it gives you just enough humor and goofiness that you get these. You don't know the rules of horror. Let me give you the rules of horror.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you ever have
Rules to
sex? Oh,
surviving.
bullshit. And
Mm-hmm.
don't you drink? And everybody's like, well, I'm dead. And don't you dare say I'm leaving and I'll be right back. And you get these tropes, and it's hilarious to watch them get broken. Yeah, I think it's a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
It's a 4-star movie for me,
Yeah,
easily.
that's what I give it as well.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. It's not the top tier of horror because it's a little derivative and a little meta,
Well, yeah.
but
I
it's
lean 2, 3.5, but I still give it a 4.
it's the top of kind of that second wave of
Yeah.
horror, or third, whatever you want to call it, but and probably one of Wes's best movies.
Oh yeah. That one and Nightmare on Elm Street are ultimately going to be the two that he's the longest remembered for, I think, because they changed everything so
Yeah.
drastically.
Well, neither of them are Deadly Friend, but we'll deal with that at a later date.
Well, see, as another thing I learned from doing this podcast, I could be wrong, but I think there's no such thing as a bad movie. That movie just isn't old enough to have found its true audience yet.
I think that there are such things as bad movies, but I also think that for the most part, bad movies are pretty fucking rare. Like
Yeah.
there are a lot of movies are just basically they're not bad, they're just serviceable.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey, look, it didn't do it for me, but it did it for you. You liked it, great, fine. 2 stars, two
Mm-hmm.
and a half stars, right? It's those ones that are just like, Jesus Christ, it was poorly shot. It's out of focus. It sounds like shit. The premise is terrible. It's a story I've seen 15 million times where you start to go, okay, but even that movie may have a small audience.
It's true.
There's no telling, especially if it's one of these class of 1984 hunks of shit that are, have a B movie audience built in that are just like, oh, you don't love this? I love it.
It's so
It's
funny
like,
that you would mention that movie again.
yeah.
What?
Well, I'm traumatized by it, to be
Well,
completely fucking
no,
honest. I don't ever want to watch another Timothy Van Patten movie as long as I fucking
that
live.
well, yeah, but then in that respect, the film served its purpose. I think it was meant to traumatize.
Yeah. This reviewer is clear.
I am the future.
No, you're not. You're the fucking past. You are the fucking master ninja past, and stay there, motherfucker. You may direct and direct only. Anyway,
Then we jump ahead about
then we jump ahead to 20 years or so.
between 96 and 17. Yeah, that's
21 years.
years to
So when Scream becomes legal to drink, out comes Get Out.
Get Out. Jordan Peele directorial debut. Is that right?
Directed, produced, and wrote.
Because we know him primarily as a comedian, so this is the beginning of that era where the comedians start doing horror movies, which should have happened a long time ago, in my opinion, because they both kind of elicit the same responses from audiences. There's a lot of similarities between horror and comedy. But of course, if you listen to Brett Goldstein podcast, most of the comedians you have on there don't like horror movies. And I'm sitting there going, well, I guess I'm that weirdo who likes the horror movies and comedy at the same time. But there's a lot of us who like
comedy comes from.
And I think today's movie is proof of it. Yeah.
A lot of comedy comes from pain. You're mining pain when you're doing comedy.
Mm-hmm.
Not always.
Yeah, according to Seinfeld,
if you look at the fucking Three Stooges, that's just pain over and over again. Painfully stupid, painfully smacking each other in the face, painfully whatever. There's a lot of different kinds of pain Chappelle mines it in a lot of his comedy, where he mines the pain of a black American, where he mines the pain of this or that.
And then Danny McBride, comedian, goes on to write or co-write Halloween 2018, another Blumhouse we're talking about. So it all continues in that respect.
Well, and I like what you said about it being kind of the same thing. being scared of being laughing are two sides of the same coin,
Mhm.
heads and tails,
Yeah.
heads and fucking tails. One is a response to terror, one is the response to comedy. And sometimes what I've found is that when you're really scared, sometimes you start laughing
Hmm.
because it's you're
Yeah.
so scared it makes no damn sense. And sometimes the comedy, the absurd is hilarious. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm not
Well,
making any
that's
sense.
how I feel about Scream. Some people would watch it and they'd be traumatized. It's so dark, and I'm sitting there giggling because I'm laughing at the craft of how they're manipulating and
Right,
having fun with the roller coaster ride of it. Because
right.
if you
Hmm.
go in going knowing this is not real, I shouldn't treat this as a drama because that's not a drama. That's more horror with
Hmm.
comedic elements. While
Hmm.
as our
Hmm.
second film today, Get Out, straddles the fence between horror drama and horror comedy. So, Get
Yep,
Out.
yep.
What is Get Out?
One other thing I was going to one other thing I was
Sorry.
going to say about no, you're great. It was fine. One of the other things I was going to say about Scream that you just brought to mind with that statement was if you've never watched a lot of horror movies, if you let's say you're 15 years old right now, right?
Hmm.
Did I make a noise? Sorry, was
Yeah,
that
that was a crazy
my
noise.
apologies? My apologies. Let's say that you are um, right now just getting into horror movies. You're 14 years old. You haven't seen anything, and somebody hands you Scream. You are going to be terrified.
Yeah, you're just gonna hit the horror aspect of it. Yeah.
Right. Now, if you're 14 and you start by watching Friday the 13th, 1, 2, and 3, then you watch Halloween, then you watch so and so, then you watch Scream, it's a completely different
It's a
movie.
different ballpark.
It's a
Right.
completely different ball game, right?
We were
You
raised
you
on all
you're
that stuff.
steeped in all that stuff.
We
Yeah,
were
you
in our early
understand it.
20s when Scream came
Yeah,
out.
you
So,
get the lexicon of horror. You understand the language of it. So Scream is like a somebody manipulating the language into something new and different.
mm.
But if you've never seen it before, you're just like, what is this? Oh my God. It's kids killing each other. That just occurred to me while we were talking, like, oh, that's a very
Hmm.
interesting thought.
I mean, you'll still get a few moments of levity with, like Dewey eating an ice cream cone and shit.
Right,
It's funny because
right.
even all the way as back as Last House on the Left, he's got incompetent cops as comedy relief. It's one of his tropes.
It's a trope in movies all over. So Get Out. So Get Out. So the first thing I want to mention about this movie is the first fucking shot of this movie is a dude walking down an empty street, and it looks like the opening of Halloween to me.
Oh yeah,
It looks like an
they're
intentional nod to
very
John
yeah,
Carpenter.
yeah. This movie
And
feels like it reminds me of one last thing I had to say about Scream.
uh-huh.
That felt more like a John Carpenter or a Steven Spielberg directed type
Mm,
movie, but
mm-hmm,
Wes Craven's version of that. And
mm.
this one
Like he
has
like
that
he
too, in
channeled
a
them.
way. Yeah,
Yeah, it felt like Peele was kind of channeling Carpenter a bit,
yeah.
especially at the beginning. That those, I mean, he cranes down onto this empty suburb with lights going. It's dark, and here's this guy walking down the street, and it he pans across the neighborhood, and you're just like, this is Halloween. What the fuck,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
That mood, that tone. Once again, another meta movie, but now we're 20 years past, so
Hmm.
we can go all sorts of different meta paths with this one. We're going to go meta society. It's so hard to do any kind of political horror, but this one does it really well because
This one,
it does it to where anybody can watch it and they can project their own things onto it.
yes,
It's the
yep.
best form of satire where you can't tell if it's satire or what side they're on. It's also the scariest form of
God
satire,
damn, you
but it's
nailed this thing.
both, right?
It sounds like you really understood this movie.
Oh, okay.
Like as far as I understand this movie, it sounds like you really understood this movie. So Get Out is about a young African American who visits his white girlfriend's parents' house for the weekend, where his simmering uneasiness about the reception of him eventually reaches a boiling point. The storyline basically is Chris and his girlfriend Rose go upstate to visit her parents for the weekend. At first, Chris reads the family's overly accommodating behavior as nervous attempts to deal with their daughter's interracial relationship. But as the weekend progresses, a series of increasingly disturbing discoveries lead him to a truth that he could never have imagined. And fuck, I wouldn't have imagined it either.
Yeah.
it's like horror meets The Outer Limits. He straddles the
Yeah.
line between Twilight Zone Outer Limits and actual horror.
Mm-hmm.
He's trying to scare you, but he's not trying to gross you out. He's trying to give you the heebie-jeebies and the creepies, but he's also not trying to go too far
It goes
into
back
the
to
gore.
Hitchcock once again. I think
Yeah,
it's the
very much so.
and I'll say this part early on. Both of these movies are manipulative because that's what a lot of
Hmm.
movies need to be. And I'm interested to see his other films to see if he hides his manipulation a little better. But for this first one, it's a pretty good magic trick. But if I can still see your hands moving, it's like you got to work on it a little bit more. But I see the trick you're doing, Phil. But what I realize
But
is
does he want you to see the trick?
no,
That's the question.
not listen to what I'm about
Okay.
to lay down here. The movie purposely is kind of slow.
Hmm.
So when you get to the end and it's keeping that slow pacing, it's an artificial tension because it's taking so long to get to what little story we have. It's a
Mm.
very effective form of manipulation by drawing it out, and that's giving you tension because you're like, just
Are
tell me
you
the next part of the story.
are you talking about the point? So it sounds like to me you're talking about that point where
I think the whole movie's paced that way,
okay, for me in particular, there's this
but you
point
start to notice it by the
where
second half.
but there's this point at where he's out with his girlfriend at the lake, and
Yep,
he
yep.
goes, "I need to leave.
Yeah,
We
that's
can't
the
do
turning
this."
point. Yeah.
And then she's like, "You're just gonna leave me." And he's like, "No, I love you. I'm not gonna leave you." And she goes, "Okay, we'll just get our shit and go, and I'll lie to my parents, and we'll get out of here." And he goes back up to the room to start packing, and he finds that box
Yeah,
full of photos of
yeah.
all her ex-boyfriends, and everything from there begins to stretch because in my mind the first time I watched it and kind of the second, I'm going, just get the fuck out of the house,
Mm-hmm.
dude. Just get the fuck out of the house.
Yeah,
Just get out.
why is it taking
which
so long? Yeah,
which is why it's so brilliantly called, first off, Get Out,
yeah.
and secondly, it's I think that's why that tension device works so
Right.
well, because
We've
it's like,
already
just get out,
set
just get
up
the fuck
this
out, just get
form
the
of
fuck out.
pacing.
And once he gets to the down to the bottom of the stairs, and he's like, "Rose, where are the keys?"
Yeah,
And her boyfriend and her brother's sitting there, and
yeah.
he can see his girlfriend's dad off to the side, and he's like, "Rose, where's the keys? Rose, where's the keys? Rose, give me the goddamn." It's
Mm-hmm.
like that shit is so tense and
Yeah.
so awesome. Fuck, it's so
Mm-hmm.
good.
That's where it kind of turns into the atomic brain at the end of it for the last 20 minutes, where it's like, now we're a mad scientist movie, which is interesting
It does
because
take a weird turn at that last 30, 25 minutes or so.
what
Yeah.
I'm saying is the movie is slow on purpose in the beginning so it can continue to tell the story at the same pace for the end to create the tension. It's like they're using this device, but I'm saying I can see your fingers moving because I know what you're doing as a filmmaker, but I like it. I bet most people would never catch on to that, but towards the end I was like, that's what's going on, because if he went at a fast pace, the movie would be over because there's not much to do. Beat up everybody, and then friend shows up and all that. But by spreading it out, you create the tension. You get on your edge of your seat, because otherwise you go, well, what's
Well,
going to
I mean,
happen?
that's, yeah, he kind of has to. I mean, it's not the type of horror movie where he's going to show you a lot of blood and guts and
Mm-hmm.
gore. So he's like you said, he's gone for that
Mm-hmm.
Hitchcock version.
And the
So
overall,
he has to pull the thread so
yeah,
fucking tight
yeah,
that it's
right.
almost going to break.
And that's what makes it work. And especially because your lead is Chris, who
Hmm.
normally would be the first person dead in most horror
Yeah,
movies, right?
yeah, yeah.
But what I love is it's not Night of the Living Dead. He
No,
fucking
he
lives,
makes
right?
it.
And
Yeah.
so you don't know if he's going to make it as well. So
Hmm.
there's that part of the tension too. That's why I love the whole. He's got, he kills the. Is this controversial? But I watched the movie. Okay, he kills the one redneck character in the film. At least there was one redneck, because that's who'd be doing this. The redneck.
Only one though. Well, you mean the son?
Yeah. Well, he's the
I
closest thing to a redneck we
he's
got.
not a
Everybody
redneck,
else
but
is hoity
he's a
toity
real
white people.
sleazebag
Right.
piece of shit for
He's the
sure. Yeah,
closest to a
yeah,
redneck.
yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah,
I was
yeah.
looking for one in the movie. I'm like, where's where's the redneck doing this? This is like a cult of people, you know.
Yeah, he's the creepy weirdo asshole that works for his dad that, when his dad turns the brains over to him, the whole thing's going to fall
So I think there's symbology in it, right? He kills the redneck, then he pulls cotton out of his ears.
You know what?
I didn't make the movie.
No, this being
something.
This being a Jordan Peele movie, I wouldn't
think
put him
that's
past
on purpose. I think
this whole fucking movie has.
I think it's because then
this whole movie has racial overtones. One of my early
that's the whole point of the movie, right?
Yeah. Look, one of my early questions in the movie is, Chris looks at his girlfriend and goes, "Do they know I'm black?"
Yeah.
And having watched the movie already, I screamed at the screen. This is my second time watching it. Of course they fucking do.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for your ass, dude. Because again, in the movie, one of the fucking people who's waiting on a body basically says, "Oh, black's in fashion."
Oh, God.
And everybody's obsessed with how in shape he is, how athletic he is, what sports he plays. They're fascinated with black people because black people, it's like a fucking new fur coat. Well, mink fur coats are in. I got to get me a black body, and then once the blacks are done, I'm going to get me a Chinese body.
That's where it turns into pure Twilight Zone Outer Limits. When you
realize, exactly.
Oh, this isn't a racist thing. He wants that guy's eyes. He wants his career. He wants to become the person.
Well, it's racist, but to me, it's not racist. It's against black people, because if Chinese people were the hot fashion right now, it would be Chinese people they'd be trying to get into.
Wasn't there an Asian gentleman amongst all the white people too? So,
but they all want to be in a black body, right? Because right now, black is hip, black is fashion, black is it.
Just white people possible too.
Yeah, they did.
It's like if the Chappelle Show skit was a horror movie.
Oh God, yes, very much so.
Comedy thing where it's like,
yes,
because when he does the flash on the guy and he's like, "Get the fuck out of here!" And he goes up to him and shit. It's like I'm having the flashbacks of that. Where,
but in a horror way, right?
Yeah,
if it had been on Key and Peele, it would have been funny.
Because
but he turns it into horror.
This movie is so bizarre because the first 30 minutes or so, I'm getting this Wicker Man, Skeleton Key, Stepford Wives vibe. This is horror drama, strictly almost, for the first half, except for Dude's Friend, who's one of my favorite parts of the movie.
You need him. You need him. You need him to keep the movie from dragging you down. You got to have this comedy element.
And then, because this, once again, one of my weird things is pick a lane, but I understand what they're doing. Halfway through, it becomes horror comedy. And it stays there, which makes sense for the satire and to lessen a little bit of it and gets more of its point across, because you don't want to be so heavy as it was in the beginning, but you need that heavy in order to then make fun of it more as it goes. But that's why it's one of those, a brilliant first effort, but that's where you get that, like, I bet he gets a little sharper as he goes, or maybe he keeps making the same movie. I haven't seen
anything else he's done either.
I'm very curious
about the first
about
thing I've ever seen him do.
But yeah, I liked it though. But doesn't it have some Class of 1984 vibes at the end when he's getting his revenge on everybody?
No, it doesn't. Not even fucking close. Stop that.
I totally thought it did.
Early, I will not allow you to tie these
fucking
together.
Impaling antlers like that since Silent Night, Deadly Night.
Now, you can tie those two movies together, but you cannot tie this to Class of 1984.
No, I'm just saying vigilante killing. I'm just glad that it's like the audience wants to see Dude kill all these fuckers, right? Just like we want to see the teacher kill Van Patten.
Going along with sort of the logic of this movie, let's say that he saves himself with the cotton in his ears. He kills the son, he kills the dad, and he leaves without killing the mom and without killing his girlfriend.
Yeah, that's open-ended.
He's up for fucking murder in 2 weeks.
Well, that's true too.
Right? Like, I mean, the logic of this movie is it's a black man who is going to be up for murder of some rich white people very quickly. So to me, in my head, if I'm this guy, I'm like, everybody got to go. Like, everybody's got to go. I'm sorry. I'm not going down for people trying to kill me because you're rich and you're white and you're going to call the cops.
But remember, the answer is NSA. This is what we do. I got this.
TSA.
Excuse me, TSA.
TSA.
NSA, I'm making Jean.
So the early on, when they're driving down the road and they hit the deer and they call the cops, and the cops want to see his license.
Yeah, we're still in drama mode. Yeah.
right, but it feels like he's trying to portray this sort of like, here's how white people can get away with dealing with cops that black people can't, right? Um, and to me, it the only reason that worked is because she has money. She's rich and white. Like
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have to do it. To me, it's not necessarily the color of her skin. It's
Mm-hmm.
necessarily the fact that she's driving a really fucking nice car. She's well spoken, and she's obviously got some money behind
Well, you know
her, right?
what's
Like,
different about this movie than anything else I've ever
mhm,
seen? It
mm,
depicts racism as being more awkward than anything.
true,
Where it's like,
true.
oh God, really?
Can we not
You know,
deal with
Tiger
this?
Woods, for God's sake, you know,
Yeah,
he's
Tiger
trying to,
Woods.
you know,
Yeah,
because that's the type of what day to day.
yeah,
It's like if you're trying to put me in the shoes of what it's like, then it's like, oh my
yeah,
God, it's more embarrassing than on
yeah. I
top of
mean,
everything else. But that's just how
I'm
this
not saying
movie
that
is
like,
presenting in its satirical
sure.
fashion.
And I hear you, and I think it's satirical. The scene I'm talking about, and I'm not saying that her being white doesn't help the situation, but it also
But you're
feels
talking
like
about the scene in the movie. Yeah.
the scene in the movie. It's like it's not. It's more about like, look, if she was some white trash that he was dating, I don't know, it would have gone that way. But
Hmm.
she's an educated white woman who's obviously going in a
If
wealthy
this was
area,
the wrong
going to visit
turn.
somebody, right? Yeah. Everything's fine until we meet Georgina in
Mm.
this movie. Everything. I mean, things are just a little bit off. We hit the deer. That's a little bit creepy. We meet the parents. They're a little bit too nice. The brother is a weirdo. But then we meet Georgina and we're like, okay, what the fuck?
Yeah, that's where
The
you know
housekeeper.
something's off. And because this
Yeah.
movie's 7 years old and I've kind of semi had it sort of spoiled for me, that I kind of
Oh
already
no.
knew what I didn't know exactly how it was happening. That was new.
Hmm.
But the idea of that it's already going to be one of these, like, we're, you know, pod people snatching you. But I didn't
Yeah.
know exactly how. But you're right. It's like, you know, even if you don't know, you know something's up because
By the
that
time you
person's
meet
not
her,
acting right
yeah,
at
and then you
all.
meet the groundskeeper and you're like, okay, what the fuck is going
Yeah, and
on
he's
here?
talking like he's like the whitest guy on the
Like
planet,
the
you
whitest
know.
dude on the planet,
The
man.
Chicago
Yeah.
skits again, right? Where it's
Hmm.
like the yeah, it pulled me back to that. Hmm.
Um, Finding out later that Georgina and the groundskeeper are actually the patriarchs of this family, matriarch and
Of
patriarch of this
course they
family is
are.
fucking so creepy.
Hmm.
Um, Peele's so good about ratcheting up the tension. Like just slowly cranks it up and then he leaves it for a while.
Yeah.
And then he cranks it up a bit more and he leaves it for
Well,
a
it's
while.
that that's that Hitchcock
It's
study.
brilliant.
It's got to be that, you know,
It's brilliant.
study. Yeah.
Somebody asked him what it's like to be the master of horror, and he said, I will not listen to you malign John Carpenter like that.
Hmm.
I won't hear it.
Yeah.
And right from the beginning of this film, where you get the Halloween opening, I feel like there's so much Carpenter
Oh, of
influence in
course.
this.
Yeah. He's
So much of it.
he's an excellent comedian. Of course, his pacing is the best thing in the
Yeah,
movie.
no, you're right about that. Yeah, the teaspoon tapping is a great device.
Oh yeah,
That fucking teaspoon is a brilliant device. Brilliant.
it's so weird. It almost goes into like this David Lynch territory for a few minutes
Yes.
there.
Hmm.
That's when you're like, okay, this movie's not the Stepford Wives. Because for a while you think it's just going to be, you know,
This is kind of
humdrum, and then
weird. Yes.
you
Hmm.
realize that that's part of the manipulation of it all.
Well, and the daughter, his girlfriend, her whole job is just misdirection,
Yeah,
not only for the audience but for him, because we're basically watching this movie kind of as him to a certain
yeah.
extent. And she's constantly misdirect. Oh, babe, they're my parents. I'm sorry, they're weird. I didn't
Mhm.
realize they were going to act
It's
like
like, how
this.
many times has she done this?
Yes, exactly. How many? And come to find out, fucking a lot, dude.
Mm.
That scene at the end, at the very end of the movie, where
Mhm.
she's just sitting on her bed with her laptop open, eating
Oh yeah,
Fruit Loops one
the
at a time,
ultimate
and
whiteness.
listening to fucking Dirty Dancing and drinking a glass of milk. It's not only ultimate whiteness, but it's the ultimate creepy fucking,
Yeah.
because she's just searching for new black men to
Mm.
fucking go after.
I haven't seen a send up of pure whiteness like that since the movie
Hmm.
Pandemonium, where the woman's taking the bath in milk.
And milk,
And
yes, Jesus.
it's a slasher
Yep,
film. That's a parody
yep.
slasher film too, which is weird. This movie reminded me. kind of like Near Dark in a way. And I see why they were both the ones that stand out, because it's like you go in thinking it's going to be kind of an average thing, and it does a few things different enough to where you go away from it going, oh, I'm going to remember that because it wasn't perfect, but it changed things enough. And this one was a pretty big success, right? Because
Yeah.
it
Oh,
did it just
this
the
this
right
thing, it won a fucking Oscar for best screenplay, a
Oh,
horror
really?
movie.
This one best screenplay?
Yes, sir, best
I can
screenplay.
see that. Yeah, it's a pretty tight script.
It's not just tight, it's imaginative, it's different. Like we've talked about, it's commenting on society, on racial tensions. It's got so much to
It's
fucking
its own
say.
kind of scream in a way, pulling from other
Yes,
movies and doing that version of it.
it's a brilliant movie. That face while he's crying stays with me. When he's in the
Oh yeah,
chair and
the cover of the
she
movie.
sends him, she, what does she call it? The down, the dark place, or the down
Oh, the
place,
sunken place.
the sunken place. The visuals when he sinks into the floor and he
Hmm.
falls into that and he falls away from that, that shit is haunting,
Yeah,
brilliant, and just
it's kind of
visually amazing.
terrifying. Yeah.
Jesus Christ, it's so
Hmm.
good. Um, the obsession with Chris's health and athleticism is by these old people at this party is so fucking creepy and weird. They
Hmm.
keep grabbing that one white lady who keeps grabbing his arms like she's like, "Oh, I'm
Hmm.
gonna have sex with you later," and it's like that's that's creepy as fuck.
Hmm.
Ugh. Um,
Well,
there's an interesting, you know, that I was just talking about that scene. You can see the cracks in this movie the second time you watch it, and I really suggest you watch it again. Wait 6 months and watch it
mhm.
again so you forget it.
Yeah.
But that scene where she's with her husband who's in a like a wheelchair, he's sitting down and he's got the cane, and she's like, "Oh my goodness, look at you, you're so much," you know, and she's grabbing his arm. They cut to the daughter who's with him, his girlfriend, and she's looking at this lady like, "What the fuck are you doing?" It's
Hmm.
just for a minute, but it's enough where you're like, oh shit, she's literally telling that woman, "Hey, back the fuck! What are you doing? You're gonna
Hmm.
blow the whole thing." And it there's telltale
You can
signs of
see
this
that
all
stuff.
throughout the
That's like
movie.
watching Scream and its sequels the second
Yes.
time, because once you know who was the killer was, you can go back to all the moments where it happened and go, was that Billy? Was that Stu? What, since I know this person knew the whole time, you're looking for her cracks in her facade.
Yeah. And the girlfriend who's constantly misdirecting, you can begin to see the cracks in her facade. How about once things start going wrong, where like the dudes, the Flash and the guy's like, "Get out of here, get out," and it starts to, all these things start to happen that aren't normal. The facade for her starts to crack. She's not the best liar. Like she's
Mhm.
not the best improv. She needs a script and she needs to know what she's doing, right?
And I also like at the very end, in the opposite of what the early Wes Craven movies do, where the victim becomes the killer. He doesn't kill her. He almost
Nope,
does, but then he
almost does.
realizes, no, I'm gonna fucking walk away from this. Well, as in Hills Have Eyes or Last House on the Left. Oh no, the message is you have become the very thing you
Right,
tried to,
right,
and that's the
right.
message of the '70s, of course, with
I
the
like
mom
that
and all
too.
that stuff.
Yes.
But
I also
not to
like
not
I
to
also
lessen that.
no, and I like the fact that he's got this
They twist
trauma
it,
that
right?
happened to him in the past, right? Like this thing with his mom, and that thing with his mom drives him throughout the movie. There's that scene where he runs
That's
over
why they can't
Georgetta.
kill him. Yeah.
He's in a Porsche leaving a house, leaving people who tried to kill him, and he runs over a woman by accident and stops
Well,
and
he
has a
knows that.
conversation with himself where he's like, "Don't do it. Don't
Yeah.
fucking do it." And he
Based off of what
flashes to him.
happened earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, he flashes to himself sitting in front of the TV eating cereal and watches TV while his mother's dying on the street,
He's
and
got
he
his
can't do it.
redemption moments. That's why.
Yeah, he
That's why
can't
he
do it.
ultimately lives at the end of the movie,
That's
probably.
why he ultimately leaves. Absolutely. Yep. Yep. Um, when those suppressed personalities come out, those
Oh
with
yeah.
like
But what are they
the
going to do
Duke and
if
the
somebody
Flash.
takes a picture? There's flashes in the world, guys. You can
Exactly.
say
Well,
that
that's why they all live in the suburbs and rich
Yeah.
neighborhoods where that shit doesn't happen,
And
right?
then the
Everything's
cell
controlled.
phone, haha, the phone, a device in this film
That's
again.
right.
And when he takes out that phone and he flashes that guy at the end, it's like, oh shit,
Oh, so
we know
good.
it's
And that dude
over
blows
now.
his own head off after killing
Yeah,
her.
he's like,
Holy
fuck
shit,
this.
dude.
Yeah.
That's so good.
They let you
It's
know
so
it's like,
good.
oh, anybody else who's under control they're fucked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, weird pod people, body
Yeah.
snatchers.
Yeah.
He mixed up a lot of movies we grew up with and
Yeah.
created a
But he
new
did such a
fun thing out of
fantastic
it.
job that it's not any of them.
Yeah, it's not. It's its
He
own
he
thing.
stole elements to make his own thing,
The
and
perfect example of I might have talked about it before. You the big thing comes out, people make all the rip-offs, and then eventually the rip-offs merge into the new thing that becomes the
the
new thing,
next
and
thing.
this is the new
Yep.
thing.
Yep.
Sorry to cut you off there.
No, no, no. My favorite scene in the movie is when he comes downstairs, where he's like, I was just looking for my camera, and she's like, here it is. He's like, great, grab those keys, let's get out of here. And he
Mm-hmm.
comes downstairs, and there's this
Oh
2 or 3 minute scene about just the keys. Where are the fucking
can't
keys?
start the car without the keys.
Can't start
Happens
the
in
cars
both of
without the
these
keys.
movies.
The first time I watched this movie, I kept saying, just get out, just leave,
Yeah,
just leave, just open the door and just get out, just
great
get out, just
title.
leave, just open the door. Don't wait for the keys, don't wait for them, don't wait for anybody. Open the fucking door and run the fuck
Just
out of
get
it.
the fuck out. That's the title
Just
of
get
the
the fuck
movie.
out, just get
Get the
out,
fuck
and
out.
that's it. That's the title of the movie. That's to me, that's why the movie's so brilliant. Not only is it aptly titled, but it forces you, especially in that moment, to be like, just get out. What are you
Mm-hmm.
doing? I would have demanded to leave immediately. I would have left without her. Like, oh, have fun. This is your family.
I
Lucky, have fun.
told you not to go in that house.
Mm-hmm. It's kind of surprising he
You don't
doesn't
go into
suspect
Dr.
her.
Frankenfurter's castle, dude. This is what
Mm-mm.
happens. We're sorry. What
It's
were you going to say?
it's kind of surprising he doesn't suspect her up until that point.
Yeah.
You know,
She's good.
yeah, it's well written. Behold the coagula. I don't know what the fuck that means. They don't explain it.
Oh,
So
that's the process.
yeah, but still,
That's the
it's
thing.
a
That's what
it's a
they call
weird.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when we go into
Um,
atomic brain level, the MST
yeah.
classic, where the old people are putting their brains in the young people's bodies. But then they put her body in the brain of a cat. Remember that?
um, Stephen Root's a nice surprise in this.
Yeah. He's all over the place.
Yeah. He's a great
In
actor.
movies, I mean, like he pops up everywhere.
Oh,
You don't
you're right.
expect him to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that whole, I mean, imagine having a conversation with a dude who's about to take over your body and force you into the
Yeah, and I watched that scene. I should have realized
sunken
right away
place.
that that's the motherfucker. And then when they showed it, I'm like, duh, why didn't I realize that like 10 minutes ago? Good misdirection, Get Out.
Mm-hmm. Um, One of the things I noticed is that most of the on-screen violence in the movie prior to the beginning of it is all done by the protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no violence against Chris. He's knocked out with hypnosis. And in fact, the mother basically chides the son into saying, fucking watch out. You've already damaged him enough. We're trying to
Yeah.
got to use him for this
Oh,
procedure.
that's one of those first.
He's the one, but he's the one once Chris wakes up and he gets out that goes around killing everyone.
Yep. And the house is burning down. Oh no, there goes the evidence, I thought, but then it got a lot deeper than that. So
Mm-hmm. Yep, exactly.
don't worry. TSA, this is what we do.
Yeah,
Perfect
and
hand wave at the end,
his friend is so needed for comic relief, especially at the end. You need to laugh about what just happened, and he looks at me and goes, "I told you not to go into that fucking house, didn't I?"
First rule, man. First rule.
And it was
movie,
perfect.
Don't go in that house.
It was absolutely perfect. The end is a wild ride. I think the daughter, honestly, is the creepiest of them all. You don't realize it until the end, where she's got those fucking headphones on and she's listening to "I've Had the Time of My Life" and eating Fruit Loops one at a time and drinking milk, and you're just like, okay, this bitch is crazy.
Checking out the new NBA.
Yeah, checking out the new Facebook of her victims. Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. I can see why this was such a hit, so effective. This might be the
Did you have anything you wanted to talk about? Because I overrode you basically.
No, I just had a few brief things. You kind of really filled out the majority of it. Much like Near Dark, I'm giving this 2.5 because I feel it took a lot of things that pre-existed, but it did just enough to push it up. But there was a few things where I was like, I think you're going to get better at this, so that's why I can't give you the 3.
I think it's probably one of the best horror movies I've seen in the last 10 years. A lot of
people think that, yeah.
It does what certain horror movies want to do, they try to do with gore and jump scares. This
Uh-huh.
movie does with tension and screenwriting and story. It's an easy 4 stars for
Yeah.
me.
My personal tastes do come into play in this a lot. I'm more of a horror comedy person. Horror drama is not my thing. And because this movie has half and half, and I understand why it does, I still had to sit through the first half.
I mean, I think there's horror comedy.
There is, but for my
Here's an
particular
interesting.
taste, it doesn't. I
we've
like it,
we've talked
but
we've talked
yeah.
about the fact that there's no female lens, no male lens, right? But is there a black lens and a white lens? Like, does this play different for a black audience, comedy or horror wise, than it does for a white
I think
audience?
it's all comes down to the script still, and that's
Mm-hmm.
why you get that
Mm-hmm.
viewpoint where you can get the empathy machine of film coming through, where it's like, oh, look
Uh-huh.
at the day to day bullshit, just the
Yeah.
little things where you have to deal with the
Mm-hmm.
racism of
Yeah. The
Tiger
give me
and
your
all this
ID when you
shit.
haven't done
Yeah,
anything wrong and that thing. Yeah.
that's what it was really. I thought was at its best, which I think is what it was trying to do. Because I've never really seen that in a movie before, right? Have you ever seen a movie about how racism is awkward? Not
Not really. No.
really. And
No.
it's like, yeah, that
I mean, I've
does
seen
need to be
a
represented.
lot of movies
Like,
about
look, you're just
racism,
being
and
a
sometimes it's
weird
been awkward.
dick, even if you're
Yeah.
not
It's just
being malicious about it. Yeah, come
yeah,
on,
it's the weird, especially when they get
gotta
to that
think about
party
shit.
and they're around. He's around all those old white people, and like that one dude's like, I know Tiger,
It's like, oh yeah, that's
and the
that's
other guy's
that's
like,
the real
black is in
horror.
fashion, and
That's
you're
the
like, oh,
real
that's the
horror.
real horror.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
it's like, oh my god, this is how people are. That's terrible.
Oh, that's
But it's
hilarious.
leaning towards a 3, leaning towards it, and maybe as time goes on, I might appreciate it more and more.
Here's what I would say. I think if you watch this again 6 months from now, you're gonna
Right?
see the
It'll be like the
nuances and
holdovers,
things.
right? Yeah.
It'll be like the
Yes,
holdovers,
I
or
still
it'll be
think
like
about
Sixth
it.
Sense or something where you watch it again, you're like, oh, it's now that I understand, or like Scream. Now that I've seen it and I understand that there's two killers,
Yeah,
this is a different movie for
it's
me.
true. And that first part probably play out different now, huh?
Mm-hmm.
It's like when I was
Mm-hmm.
saying I almost rewound out of Africa to the beginning because I started to know
Yeah.
the characters and did I miss
Yeah.
something in the beginning? But see, that's the
Well,
beauty of this is my rating this week.
right, right. Well, it's like my note that I said when he asks her early on, do they know I'm white? It's like, of course they fucking do.
Mm-hmm.
They're real, or do they know I'm black? Of course
Mm-hmm.
they do. They're super excited about that shit,
Yeah,
actually.
that's the whole impetus of.
That's the whole point, bro. You've been targeted.
Yeah, I I used to watch every horror movie that came down the pipe until
Mm-hmm.
around
Oh,
the
I remember.
time that I Still Know What You Did Last Summer Part 3 came out. To go back to that, and that was supposed to be a movie where you guessed who was doing it, right? You get to the end of that one, it was a fucking demon. I'm like, how am
Right.
I supposed to guess it's a
How are you
demon?
supposed to guess that?
And
Yeah.
so I got
Yeah.
so irritated that I kind of stopped watching a lot of the more modern horror films, and they've progressed to a level to where I know a lot of them aren't really meant for me, and so that's probably why this one doesn't hit 100%. But
Mm.
see, you're older than me, and you liked it more. So what am I?
I think it's fucking brilliant. I
Yeah,
really think it. I think, like we've talked about it.
I
It's
think it's the drama thing.
and I'm just a white dude from the Midwest, but I feel like he's touching on a lot of great themes
Oh,
about
anybody can watch this and feel of it. Yeah.
society, racism.
That's why it's good.
He's also turning that shit on its head and making it kind of funny and ridiculous at the same time. Black people are in fashion. Oh my God, really? It's a fascinating
Mm-hmm.
take on a fucking horror movie, and it's really well written
Mm-hmm.
and really well directed and really well done. I agree with you.
But
The
I just
last
go
20 or
against
25
other
minutes
horror
are
movies. Yeah.
once he kills the doctor, everything, or actually not once he kills the doctor, once he wakes up in the chair,
Mm-hmm.
things kind of speed up a little bit to kind of compress for time, right? Um, but there's still some brilliant shit in there. Like I said, imagine talking to the dude who's about to take over your body, where he's just like, dude, I just want your eyes and your career, and I'm done. I don't give a shit.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Click,
that's the creepy part. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it's really good.
That's the part
Anyway,
that I like about it is the different things it does with it. But much like Near Dark, at its core, it's writing all the tropes.
yeah, but I think
But
this
see,
is
I
a
like that
different
movie too. I give that
this
two
is a
and a half
different
as
level
well.
than
So,
Near Dark as far as filmmaking goes.
well,
And I agree. Catherine Bigelow's a hell of a
I
filmmaker.
mean, as far as I went into it and didn't think it was going to be anything other than a run of the mill, and you go, hey, this did some things different here, and I'm going to keep thinking about this. So, but this is probably a better movie than Near Dark.
That's kind of what my point was. Yeah.
So what did you
not
think?
not knocking Near Dark. I mean, I like that movie too, but I think craftsmanship wise,
Yeah.
story wise, script wise, this is a better
So
movie.
what did you give this one?
4.
4.
The definite
Yeah,
4.
I can see that. Yeah. I think that's the most of the consensus. Yeah.
And you were 2.5.
Yeah, leaning to the 3 though.
Leaning to the 3.
Because
All right.
I keep thinking about it. We're gonna get to the end of the season. I'm gonna be like, I know it was the first movie of the season, but I bet that's one that sticks around, and we'll probably have that, grow to appreciate it more. Wow, that was a long one.
Yes, sir.
And so next week we continue this plunge.
We do.
Mm-hmm. So what do you have
And
next time?
let's see. Oh, is it my turn?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Well,
We've long
okay.
forgotten who.
Have we?
Yeah, that went out the window ages ago.
So I went back and forth on this. Since we've brought in a Jordan Peele movie, I think what I would like to do is I would like to bring in. I'm iffy on this one because I don't know if you can call it horror, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyways.
That's fine.
I think it's time for a David Eggers film.
Oh, all right.
So I'm going to give you The Lighthouse.
Lighthouse. People consider that horror. I haven't seen it yet, so I haven't even seen.
People do. I haven't seen it either. I've heard it's horror. I've heard it's really good. I've heard that it was shot on a weird format with an old camera.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very interested to see it. And I could have given you The Witch, which I've seen, and a lot of people think is a fantastic horror movie. But let's go into this. Let's go into the David Eggers side door, and we'll do Lighthouse first. I also could have given you The Northman, which is fucking fantastic, but we'll do this one.
All right. So we did the 90s, so we'll go back a little bit further, and I'll show you a movie about don't go in that fucking house. Okay, it's probably the granddaddy of it. It's really more a movie about they keep going in the person's house, and the person gets very frustrated about it and acts out in violent ways, as most rational people might do if a bunch of hippies kept coming into their house, one after the other, after the other, after the other. You opened the door with the boy and his dog. Now we're going into pure 70s bleakness. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, 1974. Chainsaw being 2 words. Now this time, just go into it looking at it from a technical perspective. Maybe it might be more enjoyable than how many other times. I don't know the last time you had to sit through this thing, and also this surprising lack of gore. A lot of people picture this as being incredibly violent, but it's really like a PG-13. So
I've sat through it. Yeah, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Fucking Toby here.
Yeah, we talk about Summer School. For extra credit, you can watch that episode of Joe Bob where he goes off for an hour about this movie before the movie even starts, because it's his favorite film of all time. But I think his favorite redneck cinema is Smokey and the Bandit, because that's another one that was such a huge hit that all these things start coming after it.
God bless Hal Needham. We love you, sir.
So from the 90s to the 70s, we go from Wes Craven to Tobe Hooper. And you're giving me more modern directors as a counterpoint. So Lighthouse and Texas Chainsaw might actually be a good, weird,
that could be an interesting
isolation thing. So, yeah.
That's true. Well, Jesus Christ, we've been at this for almost 2 hours, an hour and 45 minutes.
So it was like a season premiere or something.
I guess we did have a recap in there too, so, that counts.
Well, these were 2 biggies, so we had a lot to say. So,
well, I think in horror, these are 2 very iconic, top-of-the-line movies.
Mm-hmm. Watch them right now.
I look. You will. If you like horror and you watch either of these movies, you will not be disappointed. Yeah. You won't. Maybe you might like one more than the other, but you won't be disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
All right then.
Right on.
Fucking Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Okay. All right. Let's do it, man.
Yep.
I haven't seen The Lighthouse either, so your reaction might just be the same.
Because like Randy said in Scream, why is Leatherface here? I guess we'll find out next week.
That's fine. All right, Marty. Till next week. Later.
Let's